Marcus Williams stood in the long line at First National Bank, checking his phone for the third time in 5 minutes. The 19-year-old college student had been waiting for almost 30 minutes just to cash a simple check from his part-time job at the campus bookstore. His worn sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor as he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The bank was unusually crowded for a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus watched as well-dressed customers walked past him toward the VIP section, where shorter lines and comfortable chairs awaited those with premium accounts. He pulled his hoodie tighter around his shoulders and glanced at the check in his hand. $347. Not much, but enough to cover his textbooks for next semester. Finally, Marcus reached the front of the line. A sharp voice called out, "Next!" He approached window 3, where a middle-aged woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and bright red lipstick sat behind bulletproof glass. Her name tag read, Patricia Brennan, Senior Teller. She didn't look up from her computer screen as Marcus approached. "Good afternoon," Marcus said politely, sliding his check and ID through the small opening in the glass. "I'd like to cash this check, please." Patricia glanced at the documents with barely concealed annoyance. Her eyes moved from the check to Marcus's ID, then up to his face. She studied him for what felt like an eternity, her expression growing more suspicious by the second. "Where did you get this check?" she asked coldly, not bothering to hide the accusation in her voice. Marcus blinked in surprise. "From my job. I work at the university bookstore. That's my paycheck." Patricia picked up the check again, examining it under a special light as if looking for signs of forgery. "This seems like a lot of money for someone your age. Are you sure this is legitimate?" The question hit Marcus like a slap in the face. He felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment as other customers in nearby lines began to notice the commotion. "Yes, ma'am. It's completely legitimate. I worked extra hours last week because they needed help with inventory." Patricia hummed skeptically. She turned to her computer and began typing aggressively, her long fingernails clicking against the keys. "I'm going to need to verify this. It could take some time." Marcus glanced at the clock on the wall. He had a study group meeting in an hour, and after that, his evening shift at the campus library. "How long will it take? I have somewhere I need to be." Patricia's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Well, maybe next time you should think about that before trying to cash suspicious checks. I'm calling your employer to verify this is real." The words stung more than Marcus wanted to admit. He could feel the stares of other customers burning into his back. A woman behind him in line tapped her foot impatiently and muttered something under her breath about holding up the line. "Ma'am, I promise you this check is real," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I can show you my employee ID if that helps." Patricia rolled her eyes dramatically. "Anyone can fake an employee ID? Do you think I was born yesterday?" She picked up her phone and dialed a number, making sure to speak loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, this is Patricia Brennan from First National Bank. I have someone here trying to cash a check from your store, and frankly, it looks suspicious." Marcus felt his hands tremble with a mixture of anger and humiliation. He had never experienced anything like this before. Sure, he had heard stories from his friends about being followed in stores or questioned about their presence in certain neighborhoods, but this was different. This was a direct attack on his character, his integrity, in front of a room full of strangers. "The amount seems too high for a part-time employee," Patricia continued into the phone, not bothering to lower her voice. $347 for what looks like a college kid? I don't buy it." Other customers were definitely staring now. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, could almost hear their thoughts. Some looked sympathetic, but others seemed to agree with Patricia's assessment. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and escape this nightmare. A security guard, a large man with kind eyes named Frank, approached the window. He had been watching the situation unfold from across the lobby. "Is there a problem here, Miss Brennan?" "Just being thorough, Frank. This young man brought in a check that seems questionable. I'm verifying with his employer." Patricia's voice carried across the lobby, ensuring maximum humiliation for Marcus. Frank looked at Marcus with sympathy. He had seen this scenario play out before, usually with young customers who didn't fit Patricia's narrow idea of what a bank customer should look like. "Son, do you have any other identification with you?" Marcus nodded and pulled out his student ID, his library work badge, and even his high school graduation photo that he kept in his wallet for good luck. "I have all of this, sir. I just want to cash my paycheck so I can buy my textbooks." Patricia glanced at the additional identification with disdain. "Those could all be fake, too. You'd be surprised what people will do these days." She was still on hold with the bookstore, making exaggerated gestures of frustration while she waited. The bank manager, Mr. Thompson, emerged from his office. He was a stern-looking man in his 50s who prided himself on running a tight ship. "What's all the commotion about?" he asked, adjusting his tie. Patricia launched into her explanation with theatrical flair. "Mr. Thompson? This young man brought in a check for $347, claiming it's from the university bookstore. But look at him. Does he really look like someone who would earn that much money? I'm just being cautious about potential fraud." Mr. Thompson looked Marcus up and down, taking in his worn clothing, his nervous expression, and his obvious discomfort. Instead of seeing a hard-working student trying to cash a legitimate paycheck, he saw what Patricia wanted him to see, a potential threat. "We can never be too careful," Mr. Thompson agreed, nodding approvingly at Patricia. "Proceed with the verification. We don't want any fraudulent activity in our bank." Marcus felt like he was going to be sick. The humiliation was overwhelming, made worse by the fact that a crowd was definitely forming now. People were pretending to fill out deposit slips while actually watching the drama unfold. Some were even pulling out their phones. "Please," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just need to cash my check. I've been banking here for 2 years. My account is in good standing." Patricia finally got through to someone at the bookstore. "Yes, I need to verify employment for a Marcus Williams. He's trying to cash a check for $347, and frankly, it seems like too much money for someone like him." The phrase, "someone like him," hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Marcus knew exactly what she meant, and so did everyone else in earshot. This wasn't about the check being suspicious. This was about him being suspicious, simply because of who he was. The conversation with the bookstore seemed to go on forever. Patricia asked detailed questions about Marcus's employment, his hourly wage, and whether it was possible for him to earn that much money in a single pay period. She spoke as if Marcus wasn't standing right there, as if he was some abstract problem to be solved rather than a human being deserving of basic respect. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, Patricia hung up the phone. Her expression was sour, like she had tasted something unpleasant. "Well," she said reluctantly, "they confirmed that you do work there and that this paycheck is legitimate." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him, followed immediately by a surge of anger. "So you'll cash it now?" Patricia sighed dramatically, as if cashing a legitimate check was the most inconvenient thing in the world. "I suppose I have to. But next time, make sure you bring more identification. We can't be too careful with people like you." There it was again, that phrase that cut through Marcus like a knife. He wanted to say something, to stand up for himself, to demand an apology. But he was tired, humiliated, and just wanted to get out of there. He watched as Patricia slowly, deliberately processed his transaction, taking far longer than necessary, as if hoping he might give up and leave. The cash finally slid through the window slot. Marcus grabbed it quickly, stuffing the bills into his wallet without counting them. He just wanted to escape this nightmare and pretend it never happened. As he turned to leave, he heard Patricia's voice one more time. "Have a nice day," she said in a tone that clearly indicated she hoped he would have anything but a nice day. Marcus walked toward the exit on shaky legs, his face burning with embarrassment. Behind him, he could hear the whispered conversations starting up, people discussing what they had just witnessed. Some seemed outraged on his behalf, but others were nodding in agreement with Patricia's handling of the situation. He pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped into the afternoon sunshine, but the warmth on his face couldn't chase away the chill he felt inside. For the first time in his life, Marcus truly understood what his parents had tried to prepare him for. The reality that no matter how hard he worked, how polite he was, or how legitimate his business, there would always be people who saw him as suspect first and human second. Little did Marcus know that this humiliating experience was about to take a dramatic turn. And Patricia Brennan was about to learn that assumptions can be dangerous things, especially when they're made about people whose true circumstances are far different from what they appear to be on the surface. Marcus sat in his car outside the bank for several minutes, his hands still shaking from the encounter. He pulled out his phone and stared at it, debating whether to call his father. David Williams was a busy man, and Marcus had always tried to handle his own problems. But this felt different. This felt like something bigger than just a rude bank teller. After a few minutes of internal debate, Marcus dialed his father's number. The phone rang twice before a familiar deep voice answered. "Marcus, everything okay, son?" Just hearing his father's voice made Marcus feel a little better. "Dad, something happened at the bank today. I don't really know how to explain it." "Take your time. Tell me what happened." Marcus recounted the entire humiliating experience, from the long wait in line to Patricia's suspicious questions to the public verification call. His father listened without interrupting, but Marcus could sense the tension building in his silence. "Which bank was this?" David asked when Marcus finished his story. "First National Bank on 5th Street. Dad, I've never experienced anything like that before. She made me feel like I was a criminal just for trying to cash my paycheck." David Williams was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled, but Marcus could hear the underlying anger. "Son, I want you to know that what happened to you today was completely unacceptable. No one should ever be treated that way, especially not at a bank where respect for customers should be paramount. I just don't understand why she was so suspicious. I had all my identification. My check was legitimate." "This wasn't about your identification or your check, Marcus. And I think you know that." David's voice was gentle but firm. "Sometimes people make assumptions based on how we look, and those assumptions can be hurtful and wrong." Marcus nodded, even though his father couldn't see him. "What should I do? Should I file a complaint?" "Let me handle this, son. You focus on your studies and your job. Don't let one person's ignorance define how you see yourself or your worth." After they hung up, Marcus drove to campus feeling emotionally drained. He couldn't concentrate during his study group, and his friends noticed his distracted mood. When they asked what was wrong, he found himself reluctant to share the story. It felt too raw, too personal. Meanwhile, David Williams sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor of the Williams Financial Tower, staring out at the city skyline. His assistant, Jennifer, knocked on his door and entered when he called for her to come in. "Mr. Williams, you have the quarterly board meeting in an hour," she reminded him, setting a stack of reports on his desk. "Jennifer, I need you to cancel that meeting." She looked surprised. David Williams never canceled board meetings. "Sir, is everything all right? I need to make an unexpected visit to one of our branch locations, First National Bank on 5th Street. Jennifer's eyes widened slightly. David Williams was the CEO of Williams Financial Group, which owned a chain of regional banks including First National. When he made unexpected visits to branches, it usually meant someone was in serious trouble. "Should I call ahead and let them know you're coming?" "No," David said firmly. "This will be an unannounced visit." An hour later, David Williams walked through the doors of First National Bank. He was dressed in his usual impeccable business attire, a navy blue suit, crisp white shirt, and a tie that probably cost more than most people's car payments. His presence immediately commanded attention, though most of the customers and employees didn't recognize him. He walked directly to the customer service desk, where a young employee named Sarah was working. "Good afternoon. I'd like to speak with your manager, please." "Of course, sir. May I ask what this is regarding?" "Customer service concerns." Sarah disappeared into the back office and returned a moment later with Mr. Thompson, who approached with his professional smile firmly in place. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Robert Thompson, the branch manager. How can I help you today?" "I'd like to discuss a customer service incident that occurred here earlier today involving one of your tellers." Mr. Thompson's smile faltered slightly. "I see. Would you like to step into my office to discuss this privately?" "Actually, I think this conversation should take place right here, where the incident occurred." David's voice was calm, but carried an authority that made Mr. Thompson nervous without quite knowing why. Other customers in the lobby began to notice the interaction, drawn by the obvious tension. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand. Earlier today, a young man named Marcus Williams was subjected to humiliating treatment while trying to cash a legitimate paycheck. He was accused of fraud, questioned excessively, and made to feel like a criminal in front of your other customers." Mr. Thompson's face went pale. He remembered the incident clearly now. "Oh, that. Well, we have procedures to follow for verification of checks, especially when they seem unusual." "Unusual how?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Mr. Thompson looked around nervously, realizing that their conversation was attracting more attention. "Well, the amount was quite high for someone so young, and we just wanted to be thorough. The amount was $347 from a legitimate employer for a student with a part-time job." "What exactly was unusual about that?" Patricia Brennan, who had been serving another customer, looked over when she heard Marcus's name mentioned. She approached the conversation with curiosity rather than concern. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson. I couldn't help but overhear. Are you talking about that boy from earlier? I was just doing my job, following proper verification procedures." David turned to look at Patricia for the first time. The woman who had humiliated his son stood before him with confidence, apparently proud of her actions. "You must be Patricia Brennan." "Yes, sir. I've been with this bank for 8 years. I take fraud prevention very seriously." "So seriously that you accused a legitimate customer of fraud based on what criteria exactly?" Patricia's confidence wavered slightly, but she maintained her defensive stance. "The check amount was suspicious for someone of his background. Young people like that don't usually have jobs that pay so well." "Young people like what?" The question was asked quietly, but everyone in earshot could hear the danger in David's tone. Patricia realized she might be walking into a trap, but she had gone too far to back down now. "You know what I mean. Kids from that part of town, dressed the way he was dressed. They're usually trouble." A deadly silence fell over the bank lobby. Other customers had stopped their transactions to watch the confrontation unfold. Even the security guard, Frank, had moved closer to observe. "I see," David said softly. "So you profiled a customer based on his appearance and made assumptions about his character and his circumstances." "I was protecting the bank from potential fraud. You were perpetuating discrimination and creating a hostile environment for a paying customer." Mr. Thompson, sensing that this situation was spiraling out of control, tried to intervene. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but I'm sure we can resolve this matter privately. Perhaps you could give us your contact information and we can follow up." My contact information? David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card. He handed it to Mr. Thompson with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Thompson looked at the card, and his face went completely white. His hands began to shake as he read the name and title printed in elegant gold lettering. David Williams, CEO, Williams Financial Group. "Oh my God," he whispered. Patricia looked between the two men, confused by Mr. Thompson's sudden change in demeanor. "What's going on? Who is this man?" Mr. Thompson turned to Patricia with wide, terrified eyes. "Patricia, this is David Williams. He owns our bank. He owns all our banks." Patricia felt the blood drain from her face. The room seemed to spin around her as the full implications of the situation crashed down on her. That's impossible. "The Marcus Williams I dealt with was just some college kid. That college kid is my son." The words hit Patricia like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her hand flying to her mouth. Around the lobby, customers gasped and whispered to each other. The story was unfolding like a movie scene, and everyone present understood they were witnessing something extraordinary. Your son?" Patricia stammered. "My 19-year-old son, who works part-time to learn the value of money and hard work, who has been banking at this location for 2 years without incident, who you humiliated today because you made assumptions based on his appearance." Frank, the security guard, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "Mr. Williams, sir, I tried to help the young man, but Miss Brennan insisted on her procedures. I want you to know that what happened wasn't right." David nodded at Frank with respect. "Thank you for treating my son with dignity. It means more than you know." Patricia was hyperventilating now, the full scope of her mistake becoming crystal clear. She had just destroyed her career by discriminating against the son of the man who owned the bank. But more than that, she had hurt an innocent young man who had done nothing wrong. "Mr. Williams, I didn't know. I was just trying to do my job." "Your job is to serve customers with respect and professionalism. Your job is not to make assumptions about people based on their race, their age, or their appearance." The lobby was completely silent except for Patricia's labored breathing. Other bank employees had gathered to witness the confrontation, all of them understanding that they were seeing a career-ending moment. Mr. Thompson finally found his voice. "Sir, I can assure you that this type of behavior is not reflective of our usual standards. We will take immediate action to address this situation." David looked at the manager with disappointment. "You were present during this incident, Mr. Thompson. You supported and encouraged Miss Brennan's actions. You are as much a part of this problem as she is." The truth of that statement hung heavy in the air. Mr. Thompson had indeed endorsed Patricia's behavior, had praised her for being cautious. He had seen a young black man and automatically assumed he was a threat rather than a customer deserving of respect. David Williams looked around the silent bank lobby, his gaze taking in every face: the employees who had watched the discrimination happen, the customers who had witnessed his son's humiliation, and the security cameras that had recorded everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the space, "what you witnessed here today is unacceptable. No customer should ever be treated the way my son was treated, and I want everyone to understand that this behavior will not be tolerated." Patricia was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks as she realized her 8-year career was over. "Please, Mr. Williams, I made a mistake. I can learn from this. I can do better." David studied her with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Miss Brennan, you didn't make a mistake. A mistake is adding numbers wrong or forgetting a password. What you did was make a conscious choice to treat my son as less than human based on your prejudices." "But I didn't know he was your son." The desperation in her voice was painful to hear, but David's expression didn't soften. "That's exactly the point. It shouldn't matter whose son he is. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, whether they're the CEO's child or someone with $5 to deposit. Mr. Thompson was frantically trying to think of ways to salvage the situation. Sir, perhaps we could arrange for additional training for our staff. We could implement new policies to ensure this never happens again. Training on what, Mr. Thompson? How to treat black customers like human beings. How to not assume criminality based on skin color. These aren't skills that should need to be taught. They're basic human decency. Frank, the security guard, stepped forward again. Mr. Williams, if I may say something, I've worked security for 12 years, and I've seen this happen before. Not just here, but at other places too. Young black men get treated differently, and it's not right. Your son handled himself with more dignity than most adults would have in that situation. David smiled at Frank for the first time since entering the bank. Thank you, Frank. What's your full name? Frank Rodriguez, sir. Frank, how would you feel about a promotion? We're going to need new leadership at this branch. Frank's eyes widened in surprise. Sir, I'd be honored, but I don't have management experience. You have something more valuable than experience, Frank. You have integrity and compassion. Those are qualities we can't teach. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. Frank straightened his shoulders and nodded. Yes, sir, I accept. Patricia let out a sob of despair. Not only was she losing her job, but she was watching someone else receive the opportunities she had thrown away through her own bigotry. David turned his attention back to the matter at hand. Miss Brennan, Mr. Thompson, effective immediately. You are both terminated. Your access to bank systems will be revoked, and you have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings before escorting you from the premises. You can't do this, Patricia protested. I have rights. I followed bank procedures. You discriminated against a customer based on race, and that discrimination was witnessed by dozens of people and recorded on security cameras. Any legal challenge you might consider would only result in further exposure of your behavior. Mr. Thompson, meanwhile, was calculating the financial implications of his termination. His mortgage, his children's college tuition, his wife's medical bills, all suddenly in jeopardy because he had chosen to support discrimination rather than stand up for what was right. Mr. Williams, please, I have a family. I made an error in judgment, but I can learn from this. Your family will have to live with the consequences of your choices, just like Marcus had to live with the consequences of your discrimination today. David pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Jennifer, I need you to send HR representatives to the 5th Street branch immediately. We're implementing immediate personnel changes. As he ended the call, David noticed that a small crowd had gathered outside the bank. Word of the confrontation had spread on social media, with customers posting about witnessing the CEO of Williams Financial confront racism at his own bank. A young woman with a press badge pushed through the crowd and entered the lobby. Mr. Williams, I'm Sarah Chen from Channel 7 News. Can you comment on what happened here today? David considered the request carefully. He could have his security team escort the reporter out, could handle this matter privately. But maybe that wasn't the right approach. Maybe it was time to make a public statement about discrimination in banking. Miss Chen, what happened here today was a reminder that racism and prejudice still exist in our society, sometimes in places where we least expect them. My son was discriminated against by employees of my own bank, and that is completely unacceptable. The reporter's cameraman had arrived and was filming the impromptu interview. What actions are you taking in response? We're implementing immediate personnel changes and reviewing our policies nationwide. But more importantly, we're committing to ongoing training and accountability measures to ensure this never happens again at any of our locations. Patricia, who had been quietly gathering her things from behind the teller window, suddenly burst out in anger. This is ridiculous! I was doing my job. If people don't want to be treated suspiciously, Maybe they should dress better and act more professional." The entire lobby fell silent again. Even after being fired, even after learning that Marcus was the CEO's son, Patricia still couldn't understand that her behavior was wrong. David looked at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Miss Brennan, you've just perfectly illustrated why you were the wrong person for this job. You still don't understand that the problem wasn't my son's appearance. It was your assumptions." The news camera captured Patricia's final outburst, ensuring that her words would be preserved for posterity. She stormed out of the bank, leaving her nameplate and 8 years of employment behind. Frank Rodriguez began his new role immediately, working with David to address the concerns of customers who had witnessed the incident. Many were supportive, sharing their own stories of discrimination they had experienced or witnessed. Others expressed appreciation for seeing accountability in action. An elderly black woman approached David with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Williams, I want to thank you for standing up for your son. I've been banking here for 20 years, and I've felt that woman's judgment every time I came in. Today you made it clear that we all deserve respect." Her words hit David harder than Patricia's discrimination had. His son's experience hadn't been an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of behavior that had made other customers feel unwelcome in his own bank. "Ma'am, I apologize that you've had negative experiences here. That's going to change, starting today." As the afternoon progressed, David worked with Frank and the remaining staff to address the immediate concerns and begin planning for long-term changes. New training programs would be implemented nationwide. Customer feedback systems would be enhanced, and most importantly, the bank would partner with community organizations to ensure they were serving all customers with the respect they deserved. When Marcus arrived at the bank that evening, having heard from his father about the dramatic events, he found a very different atmosphere than the one he had left that morning. Frank greeted him personally and apologized on behalf of the bank for his earlier treatment. "Your father is a good man," Frank told Marcus. "He could have handled this privately, could have just fired those people quietly. But he chose to make a statement about what's right and what's wrong." Marcus nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "I never expected any of this. I just wanted to cash my paycheck." "And you should have been able to do that without any problems. The fact that you couldn't says more about us than it does about you." David emerged from the manager's office where he had been working with HR representatives. When he saw his son, his stern business expression melted into one of paternal concern. "How are you doing, son?" "I'm okay, Dad. Better now. But I keep thinking about what would have happened if you weren't who you are. If I was just some random college student with no connections." David nodded gravely. "That's exactly what we need to change. No one should need a powerful father to be treated with basic human dignity." As they prepared to leave the bank, David addressed the staff one final time. "I want everyone to understand that what happened here today was not an isolated incident that we're going to forget about. This is a turning point for our company. We're going to do better, not just because it's good business, but because it's the right thing to do." Outside the bank, the news crew was interviewing customers about their experiences. The story would lead the evening news, sparking conversations about discrimination in banking and customer service across the region. Patricia Brennan would find herself unemployable in the banking industry, her discriminatory behavior captured on camera and shared widely on social media. Mr. Thompson would struggle to find another management position, his reputation damaged by his support of discriminatory practices. Frank Rodriguez, meanwhile, would prove to be an exceptional branch manager, implementing policies that made the 5th Street location a model for inclusive banking. Under his leadership, the branch would become known for its welcoming atmosphere and exceptional customer service. Marcus would return to the bank many times over the following months, not just as a customer, but as a symbol of the changes taking place. His experience had sparked a company-wide transformation that would affect thousands of employees and millions of customers. The incident at First National Bank became a case study in business schools about the importance of corporate leadership in addressing discrimination. David Williams received recognition from civil rights organizations for his handling of the situation, but he always insisted that the real hero was his son, who had maintained his dignity in the face of humiliation. Years later, when Marcus graduated from college and joined his father's company, he would often visit the Fifth Street branch. Frank would always greet him with a smile and remind him that his courage in the face of discrimination had changed not just one bank, but an entire corporation's approach to serving its customers. The lesson was clear. Assumptions based on appearance can be dangerous and costly. Respect and dignity should be afforded to everyone, regardless of their perceived status or background. And sometimes, the person you least expect to have power might be the one with the ability to change everything.